Hello and welcome to another video from me, this tutor, and in this video we're going to be looking at the American topic, 1920 to 1973, the AQA topic, and looking at scribe questions, making sure we know how to get those spot on, and we're going to be doing some of the content about 1920s life. So in particular, we're going to be looking at Prohibition, and we're looking at Black Americans and seeing about how their life was developing in the 1920s. We're going to have a little bit of a recap of some of their knowledge and then practice those describe questions. Now, they should be relatively simple in the exam. They're only 4 marks, so let's make sure we can get all 4 marks. So let's have a little recap, first of all, of our knowledge with a quick quiz and a little recap around the revision guide. Okay, so here's a quick quiz, 10 questions only. Use these to help you sort of navigate around the revision guide or navigate around my revision videos to find your key knowledge and practice your understanding. You can pause me and have a look through each question and make sure you can find the answers and then come back and I'll talk through the answers. Okay, got some answers, so let's go through them now, shall we? So, name one group that campaigned to ban alcohol. So obviously with Prohibition here in mind, we've got the Anti-Saloon League, we've got the Women's Christian Temperance Union. So one of those ideas would be really great. We've got named 2 laws that banned alcohol and caused prohibition. So there's obviously the 18th Amendment, but then the Volstead Act actually bans the process of distributing alcohol as well. Anything above 0.5% was banned. Name the people employed to enforce prohibition. So you had prohibition agents. You had many thousands of them around the country. Probably not enough to go around and enforce the prohibition laws, but you had these federal agents going around. How much alcohol consumption decreased during this time? So only 30%. So not therefore a success prohibition. And that suggests some of the illegal activities that were going on, which is our next set of questions. So what was the name of the illegal saloons set up? So the speakeasies were the sort of gangster-led, perhaps, saloon bars where people could drink or have a good time. There might be entertainments, that sort of thing. And then, of course, what was the name of people who smuggled the alcohol? So maybe from Canada or from places where they've been making it illegally. You've got your bootleggers, and obviously considering the idea of sort of maybe a boot of a car, they're hiding the alcohol in and they're sort of legging it, as it were. Maybe to coin an English expression might help you understand what the phraseology. So how much did gangsters earn from this illegal alcohol trade? So up to $2 billion. So huge promotion of gangsters developing. So a few more questions about gangsters as it sort of links in here. So when did Capone become a gang leader? So 927. And what was the famous massacre which led to him taking over Chicago? So the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And name the group that campaigned for the end of Prohibition. Well, in this one you've got the Association Against the Prohibition Amendment, and then Prohibition was ended along when Roosevelt came into power with the New Deal. All right, so here is our describe question. Describe 2 ways that Prohibition impacted life in America. Now, firstly, let's just think about the success criteria. As I've said many times in the videos, knowing the knowledge is one thing. Actually meeting the criteria of the questions are really another really important thing to consider. You can have lots of knowledge, but if you don't do the question correctly, you're not going to get the marks. So probably 2 or 3 things to pay attention to here. So what do you think is success criteria? Jot your ideas down or have a good think, and I'll tell you how to do this question correctly in a sec. Right, you got some ideas down? You pause me, had a go, had a think. Right, so here's my ideas then. So you must give 2 ideas focused on the question, of course. It says describe 2. So make sure you do 2 ideas. Okay, 2 different ideas. Give a clear point, firstly, to start off your idea, and then support it with factual knowledge. So you're going to go point, evidence. Then repeat this. Give a point supported by evidence. Yeah? So not a full peel paragraph. There's no explanation needed. Describe. Point, evidence. Do not write too much. 3 sentences per idea is plenty. Point, 2 sentences of evidence. Point, 2 sentences of evidence. 6 minutes only for this question. Okay, the rules of the AQA exam are minutes. The minutes of the question is the marks plus half the marks again will give you how long to spend on a question. So this is only 4 marks, so therefore it's 6 minutes. Okay, so therefore we need to have 2 ideas and supported with evidence. So let's have a plan then. So think of 2 points then and 2 bits of evidence. Make sure they are different points about prohibition. Obviously, there's a clue in my quiz about obviously how much it impacted life. Did people actually give up alcohol? People became criminals, gangsters maybe even. These could be things to consider. So make some points and come up with some evidence. Okay, and we'll go through them in a moment. Have a pause and think some ideas. Okay, so here's my idea. So I've gone with increased crime as my first point. We sort of suggested that idea a moment ago. And obviously, we're going to talk about the fact that most people disobeyed the law. Drinking only dropped by 30%. And there were more speakeasies, illegal bars, than there were saloons in the post-war years. So therefore, people clearly were drinking lots. Organised crime made huge amounts of money, $2 billion. People at Al Capone became famous criminals based upon this. Alcohol-related bad health increased. So moonshine, mentioned in obviously the revision guide, moonshine was difficult to make, could be explosive, for instance, and obviously the amount of illegal drink that came in that wasn't monitored meant it might have had impurities and led to things like alcohol poisoning, or the alcohol levels were really high. So we've got 800 deaths in 1926 compared to 98 in 1920. So really impacted people's lives in a negative way with lots of problems. Okay, so how do we write this? As I said earlier, we make a point and evidence. We're not doing the full Peel paragraphs I talk about in other questions. So one way prohibition impacted lives was evidence. For example, give an example. Okay, so what do you think would be a good opening sentence for the first point? So in your revision guide now, or if you're working on a piece of paper without my revision guide, then give it a go now. How are you going to do your opening sentence? Pause me now and give it a go. So I've written then, here's my answer. So one way that prohibition impacted life in America was it led to increased crime in America. Very simple, pretty much the plan we just made. So 1 or 2 sentences now to back this up with some evidence. Try and have 1 or 2 facts, 1 or 2 keywords in there to back it up. Away you go now. Pause me and try and back it up with an example. Okay, so here's what I've gone for. I've said, for example, the majority of people in the USA broke the law by not following prohibition. This was shown by the fact that by the late 1920s, there were more illegal speakeasies than legal saloons before prohibition. Also, organised crime, there was $2 billion worth of money to be made out of it in this time. So obviously, lots of people were not following the law. So what about the second idea then? So now have a go at this. Obviously, you can say a second way or another way, and then just get straight into point and evidence. Okay, so what do you think you would do for this one? Pause me now and practice the whole answer. Okay, so the opening sentence, the second way, we talked about maybe bad health, and then give some evidence to back that up. Practice the whole answer. See if you can do it in 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, away you go. Okay, so I've gone for then a second way that prohibition impacted life in America was that it may have actually led to a decrease in health rather than increased health standards it hoped to achieve. For example, in 1920 there were 98 deaths from alcohol poisoning, but by 1926 there were over 800 deaths due to moonshine being made with varying degrees of alcohol. Add to this, moonshine was very unsafe in people's homes and it might cause fire or explosions. Okay, so hopefully that was a nice, sensible, common sense way of answering that question. Okay, let's look at another question then, shall we? And this one says, describe 2 problems faced by Black Americans in the 1920s. Okay, so again, same as the previous question, we need a couple of points, a couple of bits of evidence. So spend a couple of minutes looking through revision guide pages, see if you can find some ways in which there was problems faced by Black Americans in this time period. We want 2 very different problems and evidence to back it up. So plan your ideas now. So pause me and look around and see if you can find your ideas. Okay, so here's what I've come up with. Obviously, racism and segregation should have been something you found. And you can back that up with the Jim Crow laws in the South that segregated black and white Americans. So obviously, black Americans were considered to be very much lower class citizens than white Americans. They had lesser facilities. You could also talk about poverty and lack of opportunity as another idea, perhaps. Many people lived in overcrowded ghettos like Harlem. This led to race riots about poor conditions and jobs in places like Chicago in 1919, for instance. You might have also talked about a lack of political opportunity, maybe, and that'd be a good sort of problem to look at as well. You've got the development of the NAACP under Du Bois in the 1920s, but there was a real lack of political opportunities, and his campaigns obviously suggest that. So that's another potential idea you might have picked out. Okay, let's have a little practice at writing this then. So same as we did before, point and evidence. So one way that Black Americans faced problems in 1920 was that. To give you a point, they face segregation, for instance, and then give some evidence to back it up. Okay, so now have a go at your opening sentence, your point you're going to make, and keep it concise to the point. Okay, away you go. Okay, so here's my idea. I've just very simple. One way that Black Americans faced problems in the 1920s was they suffered racism and segregation. Okay, so the important bit now, backing it up with some examples. We want to see one or two keywords and a few examples in there. Okay, so describe now in a couple of sentences the problem of segregation and racism. Right, you've done that. Here's my idea then for you to compare to. So I've said, for example, in the southern states, Jim Crow laws existed that segregated Black Americans and gave them fewer rights. In particular, they had lower quality schools, jobs, housing, and social facilities that gave them a lesser life to white Americans. So very simplistic description that clearly describes the problem. Okay, so hopefully you've got one or two keywords like Jim Crow, maybe you've mentioned southern states, maybe you've mentioned some of the things that are segregated. I think that would be important things to mention. So maybe you started off with the other idea, okay, but you can sort of reverse it around as it were. But now I'm going to talk next about obviously the second one we planned, which was to do with sort of poverty and problems. So have a go at this one. I'm not going to break it down into two parts. I'm just going to show you the full answer. So again, try and write this in 2 or 3 minutes, your idea with your opening point and your one or two sentences of evidence to back it up. Okay, be concise and timely. Try and be quick, but also factual and to the point. Okay, so away you go, and then I'll show you the answer in a sec. All right, so here's my answer. So another way that Black Americans faced problems in the 1920s was that they lived a life of poverty. For example, many Black Americans migrated north to cities like Chicago and New York for jobs, but this created crowded conditions with low-paid, unskilled work. For instance, in Harlem, there were 15,000 Black Americans in 1914. This rose to 165,000 by 1930. This led to race riots in many northern cities like the 1919 Chicago race riot. Okay, so I've chosen to talk about race riots. You could have talked about sharecropping and those who stayed in the South working on sharecropping farms, very limited income because they had to share the money with the white landowners and the challenges they faced. There was other routes to take to answer this question. Hopefully you found that useful and you've sort of got to grips with a nice, concise, to the point answer that can be very timely. Okay, hopefully those two questions were useful and you've got started to get to grips with the describe question somewhat and also revise from your knowledge of 1920s. So do subscribe for more videos. There's obviously going to be more and more coming out from me across all the topics. So do subscribe and I shall see you again soon. Bye bye for now.